Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Sceptic Takeout, the new show where we will be looking at belief, religion and apologetics through the eyes of skepticism. You can follow us on Facebook by hitting the link in the description below, where you can find more information on this and upcoming episodes. In our first episode we will be asking the question, what is skepticism and what are apologetics? Sit back, enjoy, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Episode 1. Scepticism and Apologetics. I'm your host Richard Gilliver, and this is the new show where we're going to be asking about religion. What is it? Why do people believe what they do? How did the different religions come about? Belief. Why do we believe what we do? Can our beliefs change? And what is it that people believe? And apologetics. What are apologetics? Why do people engage in apologetics? And is there a difference between people who believe in a religion, who accept apologetics, and those who don't? But first we're going to explore the lens through which we're going to ask these questions. And that is skepticism. Skepticism, writes Richard H. Popkin, in Western philosophy, the attitude of doubting knowledge claims set forth in various areas. I think this is very important to bear in mind. So often when people hear the term skeptic, especially if it's someone who holds to irrational or unsupported belief systems, they will make the statement, prove it's not true then. For example, I believe in ghosts. I think they're real. If you don't, prove they're not true. I have heard this so many times before. It's not the skeptic place to debunk claims, although sometimes they will unravel simply by investigating them. Rather, it's the skeptic's position to withhold belief until sufficient evidence is provided for that claim. This position is often met with scorn, sometimes stronger emotions, and really it's perfectly natural. It's a thing called the backfire effect in psychology. It's a form of confirmation bias. We are all prone to it. Unfortunately for the skeptic, when it comes to unsupported belief systems, this can be really frustrating. So many times people are quite happy to compartmentalize the belief systems. I will accept this, but this set of unsupported claims, quite happy to let through the net. Imagine, if you will, somebody trying to sell you a car. Rusty, flat tyres, maybe a hubcap or two missing, cracks in the windscreen, rear view mirror gone. You know, most of us would think, no, probably not. But then an enigmatic salesman comes along. He says, come on, I can show you, I can prove to you this car works. Let's insert the key. And he turns the key, the engine turns over and it sounds lovely. Would you still buy the car? You know, probably not. But you see, this in skepticism is where sometimes people, let things fall through the net. It's not just evidence that we're looking for. Someone coming along and turning the key and being all enigmatic, and that's not always good enough. What the skeptic is looking for is sufficient evidence. So what would be sufficient evidence in this circumstance? Sufficient evidence would be a valid MOT certificate, or maybe a friend who's a mechanic coming and giving the car a once over. Or perhaps, certificates for previous work carried out, receipts, things of that nature. These would all be considered sufficient evidence for the fact that the car works okay. The more sufficient evidence you have for a proposition, the more your confidence level can improve or be in favour of that idea. This was formalised in Bayes' theorem, a formula for assessing the likelihood of a proposition. We will look at Bayes' theorem in future episodes. But sometimes, unfortunately, when it comes to unsupported belief systems, people just don't follow these sufficient lines of evidence. Where someone wouldn't buy a rusty old car, they're quite happy to believe in ghosts, or alien abduction, or God propositions. And when it comes to the car, it's infinitely more likely that the car will work. We have much more evidence that cars work than any of these propositions. And it's much easier to test. This, in a nutshell, is what skepticism is, and we're going to investigate it in much more detail in future episodes. The next part of our programme is going to look at apologetics. Britannica.com calls apologetics the intellectual defence of the truth of a Christian religion, usually considered a branch of theology, although a wider definition applies broadly to any kind of belief or religious doctrine. There are many different branches of apologetics. They have varied greatly throughout history. They've varied greatly depending on religion or idea that they're defending, and we're going to have a look at all of these in future episodes. What we're going to concentrate on today, however, is the branch, probably the most popular branch at the moment in skepticism, and that is philosophical apologetics. These come in various forms, the most popular of which are probably the teleological argument, arguments that claim that the world is evidence of design and design is evidence of God. The cosmological argument, these are arguments that cite the universe or cosmos as evidence that there is a creator of the universe or the cosmos. The ontological argument, the argument that the only way we can imagine a being as powerful as God is if God actually exists. The moral argument, the argument that if there is absolute morality, then there must be a being who gives us that morality. Presuppositional arguments, the argument that God itself has to be the starting point of any argument for God. For example, God has to exist or we can't even begin to have the conversation. And transcendental arguments, the argument that because we can reason, there has to be a God. There are more, many more, and we could talk about each category for a long time in and of itself, but we'll look at all of those in the future. We should also consider that although in many respects a lot of these arguments are tied in or thought to be of the Christian faith, that sometimes the other thinkers from other faiths were actually the ones who proposed them to begin with. For example, the cosmological argument is these days very much associated with the Christian religious thinker William Lane Craig, who popularised the idea in his 1979 book, appropriately titled The Cosmological Argument. But this wasn't William Lane Craig's first original idea. He actually took this from an earlier set of thinkers from the Islamic religion. In fact, the word kalam itself comes from the Islamic phrase ilm al-kalam, which means science of discourse, and is a study of Islamic doctrine. There are, of course, apologetics associated with many different religions. Although we tend to kind of focus on Christianity because that's the most popular in this day and age with YouTube and things like that. Some people are aware of the Islamic origins of some of those, but in Hinduism there are apologetics in all sorts of different areas and ideas, and we're going to look at all of those in future episodes. Links to everything we've discussed in today's show can be found in the description, as well as links to some people I think you will think are awesome. They do shows on YouTube, go and check them out, well worth it, links below. In the next episode, we're going to ask the question, why do people think that certain religious figures are the most perfect example of humanity? We're going to look at the claims about them, we're going to look at the criticisms of them, and we're going to look at how those opinions have changed over time and affect our modern day perception. In the meantime, please take a look at Extra Takeout. That's going to be up soon. That's an in-between show that I'm doing after each main episode, where we're going to look at how I chose the subject matter for each show and have a little conversation about that much more informally. Of course, the easiest way to know when the next episode will air and the in-between episodes and to find out what's happening on Facebook is to like and subscribe to this channel. I have been your host. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thank you.